February 19th, 1945. The black sands of Iwo Jima waited beneath a gray Pacific sky. To the Americans preparing to land, it looked like a barren rock. To the Japanese already beneath its surface, it was a tomb. The island was small, just 8 square miles of volcanic ash and jagged stone. But its importance was immense. For the United States, it was a stepping stone toward Tokyo, a place where crippled bombers returning from missions over Japan could land safely. A forward base for fighters that would escort B-29s on their way to the home islands. For Japan, it was the first line of defense against invasion, and the orders were absolute. No surrender. Fight until the last man. Every soldier stationed there understood the grim truth. They were being buried alive in advance. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi commanded the defense. Unlike other Japanese officers, he had studied in the United States. He knew the scale of American industry. He knew reinforcements would never come. His task was not victory. It was delay, bleed the Americans for every inch of ground. So his men dug. For months they clawed through volcanic rock, carving a hidden fortress beneath the surface. 11 miles of tunnels connected bunkers, artillery caves, and pillboxes. From the sky, the island looked deserted. Beneath, 21,000 men prepared for death. The conditions were brutal. Heat, fumes, and lack of air pressed down like a suffocating hand. Food was scarce, water worse. Letters home were censored. Last wills were written before the first shot was fired. Above them, the sea was filling with steel. U.S. battleships circled, their guns already trained on the shore. For 74 days before the invasion, shells rained down. The surface of Iwo Jima became a moonscape. Tunnels collapsed, men suffocated in darkness, and yet the survivors endured, waiting for the storm to come. On the morning of the landing, over 70,000 Marines prepared to storm the island. The Japanese defenders numbered just 21,000. From the beaches, the island looked strangely silent. No movement, no fire. Some Marines believed the bombardment had wiped out the defenders. They waded ashore, boots sinking into the volcanic ash. The first hour passed in eerie quiet. Then, at Kuribayashi's signal, the mountain erupted. The silence broke at 9 a.m. From the slopes of Mount Suribachi and hidden bunkers inland, fire poured down. Mortars, artillery, machine guns. The entire beach became a storm of steel. Marines who had just stepped onto the sand were cut down in minutes. Landing craft exploded, spilling men into the surf. Heavy tanks bogged down in the black ash, easy targets for Japanese gunners. There was no cover. The volcanic sand swallowed shovels, helmets, even hands clawing desperately for shelter. General Kuribayashi's plan was working. He had forbidden the suicidal banzai, charges that had wasted lives on other islands. Instead, his men would fight from concealment, strike hard, then vanish back underground. Every position was linked by tunnels. When Marines thought they had cleared an area, defenders would reappear hours later, firing from behind. For the Americans, it was chaos. One survivor later recalled the sound of bullets like rain on tin. Others remembered the choking smell of cordite and sulfur mixing with the salt spray. Bodies lay scattered on the sand, some half buried in ash, others pulled back into the sea. By nightfall of the first day, 2,400 Marines were dead or wounded, yet the Japanese had barely begun to spend their strength. Inside the tunnels, soldiers waited, their discipline unbroken. They had rehearsed this moment for months, but survival came at a cost. The bombardment had destroyed food stores. Water was rationed to mouthfuls. The air underground was heavy with smoke and unwashed bodies. Many defenders had already been living in near darkness for weeks. Malnutrition weakened them even before the first Marine landed. Still, orders were absolute. Hold every yard. Bleed the enemy. A diary found later in the tunnels read, "We are already dead, but every step they take must be paid for above ground." American commanders quickly realized they had underestimated the enemy. The island that was supposed to fall in days would take weeks. The Japanese were not fighting to win. They were fighting to die and to take as many Marines with them as possible. As February nights fell over Iwo Jima, flares lit the sky. Machine guns echoed in the darkness. And beneath the volcanic rock, 21,000 men prepared for the long, slow fight. The turning point was still to come, and it would be soaked in blood. By the third week of fighting, the island had become a graveyard. Every ridge, every cave, every scrap of volcanic ash was contested with blood. The Marines had pushed inland, but at terrible cost. Mount Suribachi had been taken, the flag raised in a moment, captured forever on film. Yet for the Japanese underground, that photo meant nothing. The fight raged on in the north, where Kuribayashi's strongest defenses still waited. American flamethrowers and demolition teams became the tools of survival. Men with tanks of burning fuel crawled toward cave mouths. They unleashed jets of fire that roared like hurricanes, sucking the oxygen out of the tunnels. The screams inside lasted seconds, then silence. Other squads pumped explosives into the earth, collapsing entire chambers with the soldiers still inside. For the defenders, death had become routine. One survivor later described crawling past the bodies of his comrades, already stiff in the darkness, their skin coated in ash. Another recalled drinking from a rusted canteen filled with foul water, his hands trembling from starvation. Rice rations were gone. Many chewed grass, roots, even leather belts to quiet their stomachs. The psychological toll was worse than hunger. Imagine lying in blackness, listening to the muffled voices of Americans just meters away, knowing they were sealing every exit. Some Japanese soldiers pressed grenades to their chests, choosing instant death rather than slow suffocation. Others wrote final notes in blood and charcoal on scraps of cloth, knowing no one would ever read them. Yet, even in this hell, discipline held. Kuribayashi's order was clear. No surrender. Even the wounded were expected to fight. Men missing limbs propped rifles against tunnel walls. Those coughing blood still loaded machine guns. Marines described the enemy as ghosts. They would vanish underground, then reappear in places thought cleared. At night, they crept into American lines, cutting throats or stealing supplies before slipping back beneath the earth. Every Marine lived in fear of the shadows. But the Japanese were breaking. Casualties mounted. Starvation hollowed their bodies. The Bushido Code told them death was duty, yet many now felt only despair. A Marine diary captured it best. The enemy fights like men already buried. They have nothing left but death. By early March, nearly half of Kuribayashi's garrison was gone. Still, the survivors clung to their tunnels, waiting for the inevitable. The darkest days of Iwo Jima were just beginning. By mid-March 1945, the island of Iwo Jima was no longer a battlefield. It was a grave. The volcanic ridges were littered with burned-out tanks, shattered artillery, and bodies half buried in black ash. Yet, underground, the last pockets of Japanese resistance endured. General Kuribayashi, refusing surrender, moved constantly from one tunnel to another, disguising his location even from his own men. He knew the end was certain. His final messages, sent in fragments, spoke not of victory, but of honor. The battle is being fought to the last man. We shall die defending the homeland for the Marines. Victory had been won, but at a price that stunned the nation. Nearly 7,000 Americans lay dead, over 20,000 wounded. Every day, stretcher bearers moved across the ash, carrying away men broken by bullets, fire, or exhaustion. One Marine officer later wrote, "Iwo was a nightmare that no photograph could capture. The island swallowed men whole." The Japanese losses were staggering. Out of roughly 21,000 defenders, only about 200 survived capture. The rest chose death, by bullet, by grenade, or by fire in the tunnels. The few who were taken prisoner were dazed, skeletal, some unable to even stand. They spoke in whispers, as if their voices had been buried with their comrades. The final act came on the night of March 25th. A desperate banzai charge erupted from the remaining caves. Several hundred Japanese soldiers stormed the American lines in a frenzy of bayonets and grenades. They knew it was hopeless. By dawn, nearly all were dead. Kuribayashi himself vanished into legend, his body never definitively identified. When the guns fell silent, Iwo Jima stood as one of the costliest battles in the Pacific War. Its runways soon became a lifeline for crippled American bombers returning from raids on Japan. But for those who fought there, the island was more than a strategic prize. It was a scar, a memory carved in ash and blood. For the Marines, it was the place where courage met the abyss. For the Japanese, it was the graveyard of an army that chose death over surrender. And for history, Iwo Jima remains both a symbol of sacrifice and a haunting reminder of war's true cost. Today, Iwo Jima is more than just a battlefield. It is a monument. The black sand beaches and jagged cliffs remain eerily quiet, but the ghosts of 1945 linger. Every year, American veterans and Japanese survivors return to this volcanic island, their footsteps falling where fire once raged. For the United States, Iwo Jima became immortalized in a single photograph, Joe Rosenthal's image of Marines raising the flag on Mount Suribachi. That moment, frozen in time, captured not only victory but sacrifice. It became a national symbol, sculpted in bronze at the Marine Corps War Memorial near Washington, D.C. For generations of Marines, the battle cry, Iwo Jima, carried the weight of honor and endurance. For Japan, the memory is darker. The island represented a heroic but doomed defense where nearly an entire garrison chose death. In post-war years, Iwo Jima became a place of mourning, a silent reminder of the cost of militarism and the futility of fighting to the last man. Families of the fallen still come to honor those whose remains were never found, entombed forever in the tunnels. Yet, out of the ashes of Iwo Jima rose a fragile reconciliation. When U.S. and Japanese leaders stand together at memorial ceremonies, they acknowledge not only the tragedy, but the shared humanity of both sides. Veterans, who once faced each other as enemies, now bow in respect. One Marine, upon meeting a former Japanese soldier, simply said, "We were boys, both of us. We did what we were told. Today, we are just men remembering the strategic value of Iwo Jima soon faded with Japan's surrender in August 1945. But its symbolic value has never dimmed. It is studied in military academies, remembered in films, etched into monuments, and whispered about by those who lived through it. Iwo Jima endures as a paradox, a triumph carved from tragedy. A victory that came with unbearable loss, a battle that forever shaped how nations remember war. And so, on that small volcanic island, the voices of 1945 still echo, a reminder that beyond the numbers, beyond the strategies, war is always written in human lives.